Hi, lollies. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Belinda's channel. Thank you for all the love and support. Don't forget to please subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications so that anytime I upload videos, you'll be the first person to be notified. To my returning subscribers, to those people that share my videos, leave commentaries, and also educate each and every one of ours. You guys are the real MVP. So please, I came across this video of mine for you, and I thought to share. When Asian American people are having emotional breakdown, seeking for help and taking advice from the black community because of the controversy that has to do with Sinners the movie. I'm just going to roll the clip as well as some of other stitches I was able to put together. Please leave me your own thought in the comment section of what you think of this video, and please do not forget that we do not support any form of bullying and harassment. We are just here for educational and informative purposes. So lovelies, let's dive into it.
I watched Sinners, and I'm not so sure if I'm the one to speak on this, but one of the many lessons I learned from it is there's so much power in shutting the fuck up. Come on in! What are you doing? Shut up! Why is your vengeance and anger so much more important than your solidarity to the black community who has been there for you, who has uplifted you since the very beginning? Oh, it's because you're only willing to participate if you profit off of them. As a store clerk. Now there's a lot of history there, but suddenly the moment you're oppressed, the moment your proximity to whiteness widens, you're willing to throw everyone who has supported you under the bus to get your piece? Look at you. That being said, I'm gonna shut the fuck up now.
I watched the movie Sinners in theaters last weekend, and it was a cinematic masterpiece. So freaking good. And there are so many layers. Beyond just the beautiful film, the beautiful storyline, there are so many layers that go into it. I'm not going to be the person that goes into all of it. But one thing that I did want to talk about, and I can't stop thinking about, is the East Asian family. Because what that family did in that movie and what it represents feels so relevant in today's climate, and honestly relevant in a lot of key moments in our country's history. So in the beginning of the film, you see that the Asian family has a very good, positive relationship with the black community. They know each other's families, they're doing business together, they're partying together. A lot of it clearly hinges on the Asian family profiting off the black community. They are able to sell products, goods, and services. But then when you get to the end of the film, and when the vampires come, and it's not so good anymore, you see that the Asian family is so quick to throw everyone under the bus. Another Asian creator who did a whole deep dive on this, I'll try to tag them, but he essentially talks about how the Asian family was willing to sacrifice the black community, aka the exact community who was doing business with them, who was helping propping them up when things were good. And instead of standing in solidarity with them through good and bad, they are willing to sacrifice the exact people who help them the moment they're disadvantaged. That one thing really made me think of the role that Asians have played in the history of our country and the way that we have been complicit in a lot of social issues. Of course, there's a lot of nuance and history and compassion I have for Asian immigrants and the reason why they did the things they did in this country to survive. That said, I feel like I can still be critical and see that the way that Asian Americans have really benefited from other black and people of color advocating for rights in this country, and Asian Americans really leaning into their proximity to whiteness. It feels so relevant today with everything going on in our country and the way that I see Asian Americans, and I say this as a very privileged Asian American, the way that we are so complicit and worse, ambivalent to what's happening. There are other groups of people in the Asian community who aren't doing it, who aren't being complicit and ambivalent because of fear. They're doing it because they think that they're so close to white people. They do it because they think this will never happen to them. Especially right now when K-pop and K-content is so profitable in America right now. Do you not remember 20 years ago, Asian culture was not considered cool. It was not considered profitable. But because it is considered cool and profitable, we are all benefiting from it. But don't let that fool you or give you a false sense of security, and know that it is important that we should stand in allyship and in solidarity with all groups of people who are marginalized in this country, because we also are one of those people.
I was waiting for this comment to come up because this is a deeper conversation around assimilation, especially for non-Black people of the global majority. That's why I think Ryan Coogler using vampires as an allegory to assimilation into this country, as exemplified by Remick, who is an Irish immigrant, And the more he aligned to whiteness, the more he lost his ancestral roots, his cultural ties, which is why he wants to bite Sammy and why he wants to also bite Annie, because she has her indigenous spiritual practices intact. Remember, when the Irish immigrants first came to the United States, they weren't considered white. Actually, the Irish and Italians were considered people of color at the time. I also think it's important to take into consideration that Ryan Coogler specifically chose 1932 Jim Crow South era and what the tension at the times between groups was. So the Chinese couple, right, this is playing into the model minority myth that the white people allowed Asian immigrants to get mortgages, own storefronts in predominantly black neighborhoods to serve black communities and simultaneously white communities. And so they were very much like the liminal space of the middlemen. This was also exemplified through Mary, who was accepted by the black community since her grandfather was half black, but she was also a shapeshifter because she was white presenting and was able to go into white spaces and marry a white man and afford herself the power and the privilege to then go outside to the white vampires. This is the choice of assimilation. Are you going to assimilate to whiteness and gain access to certain spaces? But the sacrifice is you lose your culture, you lose your ancestral roots. And I just noticed during the movie that the first person to go outside of the safe space, because she, again, is white presenting, outside to the vampires. And then the person that invited them in was ultimately Grace. So symbolically, there will always be a cost to assimilation. You lose your culture, you lose your spiritual indigenous practices, but ultimately you lose the people that actually invite you into their community.
Let's talk about Grace and Bo Chow in Sinners, because the inclusion of Chinese immigrants in the movie Sinners was very intentional on Ryan Coogler's part. Did you know that there is a Chinese community in the Mississippi Delta that's been living there for over 100 years? I did not know that until the movie Sinners, to be quite honest, and in my research. Apparently the Sinners team worked with Chinese-American documentary filmmaker Dolly Lee to ensure that the characterization of Grace and Bo and the representation of Chinese immigrants during that time period in Mississippi was authentic. Dolly Lee also made this documentary for AJ Plus on YouTube called The Untold Story of America's Southern Chinese, about the unknown community of Chinese Americans who lived in the Mississippi Delta for more than 100 years. The 8-minute documentary video talks about how the Chinese immigrants were also working in the fields because they were cheap labor because they were foreigners with no citizenship rights. But then a lot of the Chinese immigrants pivoted to owning their own grocery stores. They were able to sell to both white people and black people. And while they made up a very small population of the Mississippi Delta, they still contributed and made an impact in the community nonetheless. See all of that history in that documentary through the characters of Grace and Bo in Sinners. In the beginning of the movie, we get introduced to Bo and Grace through that sequence of, I believe, smoke in the town where he first visits Bo. And then Bo has his daughter go and get Grace, and she has to walk across the street to the white people grocery store where she is managing that, showcasing that these Chinese immigrants are able to kind of cross that barrier freely, not freely per se, but being able to sell to white and black people and kind of cross those different worlds more seamlessly than, of course, black people. It contributes to the overall perception of Asian American people in this country. How on one hand, we are perceived by white people as the model minority and the good people of color. That doesn't come without marginalization and oppression from those very same white people. Also not invalidating that our oppression and marginalization is nothing comparable to what black people have experienced in this country. But Ryan Coogler takes one step further in the inclusion and representation of Asian Americans in Sinners by including traditional dance from the Asian diaspora in this scene. I love that when Grace and Bo started dancing, that we got to see traditional dances from the Asian diaspora. Correct me if I'm wrong if this is not the correct photo to symbolize the dance that was seen in the movie. I mentioned this in another video, but we also got to see Sun Wukong, who is the Monkey King in a lot of Southeast Asian folklore. But in fact, Yao, who played Bo in Sinners, was reached out to by the Sinners team to ask him like what iconic figures in Asian culture can we include in that sequence that could be recognizable. Which I think is really awesome that Ryan got the actors' input in this movie. And finally, I want to talk about this scene in Sinners. So if you haven't watched Sinners yet and somehow are watching this movie, like spoilers ahead, I feel like people are going to be irked by the fact that it was Grace specifically to be the one to invite the vampires into the juke joint. I think you can interpret this scene in different ways. On one hand, she possibly overstepped her boundaries by going out of her way to be the one to invite the vampires in when everyone else, the other Black people, did not want that. Speaking for a community that is not your community, in the process endangering other people that are not in your community around you. I feel like a lot of people are going to quickly criticize Grace for doing this. And in hindsight, yeah, that was kind of a dick move on her part, endangering everyone else around her. But you have to see it also from the context of her being a mother. The vampires, including Bo, who turned into a vampire, were threatening her daughter's life. And given that she is the only mother in that group, in a way she wanted to be on the offense and attack these vampires and just get rid of them in order to save her daughter. Given that her husband is long gone, she still has a fighting chance to try to save her daughter. You're gonna just stand there and do nothing. And I really hope people don't jump to the conclusion that everyone was unalive and turned to vampires because of her. Because in hindsight, would they have wanted to just sit on their hands and sit around and do nothing? Or do they want to go out swinging and fighting for their safe space and fighting for that juke joint? Fighting to have the freedom to have these spaces for themselves. Also, on many occasions, the Asian American community has stood in solidarity with the Black community when it comes to civil rights. It was nice to see that solidarity represented in Sinners as well. Once again, thank you, Ryan Coogler, for even including us in the Sinners story when you really didn't have to. Ryan Coogler did not have to include other non-Black marginalized communities in the movie Sinners, but he did so anyway, and for that I'm very grateful to him. Well, at its core, Sinners is a movie by and for Black people in the Black community as a source of liberation through music and dance during this time period. Sinners also utilizes vampirism and multiculturalism as a way to have a discussion about how historically non-Black communities have interacted with Black people and Black culture. What I absolutely love about vampires as a monster in the horror genre and in media is that they don't appear monstrous. They can easily blend in, assimilate, conform to civilized society and be just like any other human being. But it's their seduction tactics and the way they can lure you into their essence and in their darkness. And before you know it, it's too late and they're sucking the life out of you. That's why I think in the context of Sinners, the way they utilize these vampires as a way to showcase how parasitic non-Black people have been around Black people and Black culture. It's the way that other communities, including my own, have culturally appreciated Black culture, but then at times, more often than not, unfortunately, have veered into appropriation, exploiting and profiting off of Black culture. To my point, it's parasitic, and to have these vampires in a way be a metaphor of that, in my opinion, it was very well executed and drove those themes home. I even love that there was one specific vampire characteristic that Sinners utilized very well, and that was the concept of vampires cannot enter a space unless you invite them in. The way that these three vampires, when they said that, oh, we heard Preacher Boy singing and we absolutely loved it and we would love to partake in whatever you're doing, and they were so passive aggressive in wanting to enter this space, this safe space that the twins created with this juke joint. But the twins and the Black characters were actively trying to protect their peace and protect their space from these vampires. It was so invasive and terrifying, but again, like really drove those points home. I also interpreted vampirism in Sinners to be a metaphor and symbolic of white supremacy in America, and how all these people fell victim to vampirism and are victims of white supremacy in this country, from the Ku Klux Klan members becoming vampires. But I also want to take a moment to talk about how complex the character Remick is, and even though on the surface he is the main villain, the main vampire, the movie intentionally emphasized that Remick is an Irish immigrant, and him and his community have suffered their own set of struggles as an Irish immigrant. He too has become a vampire because of what this country has done to him too, while also not taking away that he too benefits from white supremacy as well. And again, personally for me, him doing the Irish jig and them having that moment to play Irish music in that moment, that was probably an act of defiance for a character like Remick, who is an Irish immigrant. And in this Hollywood Reporter interview, Jack O'Connell talks about how Ryan Coogler honored his Irish heritage in that scene. Other cultures and communities that were represented in Sinners, of course, was the Chinese immigrant community. Through the characters Grace and Bo Chow, a Chinese immigrant couple that run grocery stores, one grocery store for the white community and the other for the black community. The way that the Chinese immigrant community and Asian Americans in general are able to interact and exist in those two different worlds speaks to how they can in ways benefit from white supremacy, while simultaneously also be a victim of it too. Also got Native American Indigenous representation in Sinners as well. While it was too brief in my opinion, I still think it made an impact to the overall story. I want to shout out and give credit to the creator that posted this on Threads, and how Black and Native people both being affected by white colonialism, and how in Native American lore they also have vampiric entities in their stories, and the fact that the Native people were vampire hunters in the story, and it speaks to how Native people being the first people on this land, and how they were also probably the first people to be in contact with vampires and monsters like that. This creator's point, it was genius to show them as the knowledge holders and hunters of these entities. I would have loved to see them come back later in the movie Sinners, but again, the small screen time they had in the movie was still impactful. I also forgot to mention that in this scene where Preacher Boy is singing I Lied to You, probably one of, if not the best scene in the movie, where we get to see the legacy of Black music and how it has transformed into so many different genres that are so beloved today. During the shot where we see Grace and Bo Chow dancing as well, the fact that they included traditional dances from the Asian diaspora, correct me if I'm wrong if this is not what we saw in the movie. We also got to see this figure in Southeast Asian folklore, which is Sung Moon Kong, the Monkey King. The Malaysian actor that played Bo Chow talked about it in an interview that Ryan Coogler and the Sinners team reached out to him to ask what recognizable entities in the Asian diaspora can we include in that scene. The fact that they asked him and the fact that they wanted to include that is so commendable. I love that Sinners was an unapologetically Black movie that paid homage and owed a love letter to Black liberation through music and dance. And even then, Ryan Coogler still wanted to include other communities as well in this story, to maybe possibly further drive home that America is a melting pot, and America's strength is in its diversity. Important to recognize our dark past and our history as a country in order for history to not repeat itself time and time again. Sinners confronted that dark history while also celebrating the different cultures, especially Black culture, that make up this country. While you did not have to at all, thank you Ryan Coogler for including my community and different other non-Black communities in the movie Sinners. Ryan Coogler
Is even if some group of people from the Hispanic culture or the Hispanic people disagree with Sinners and the scene, and some of them even claim that the producer stole something from the Hispanic culture, and with that being said, they never included the Hispanic people. This man actually went on a social platform to rant. He even discredited Sinners. Even at that, there's some people who still appreciate the producer and all of the scenes in the said movie coming from Asian people who is very honest enough to actually point out some of the debunk from their own community. They are all out pointing out how their own community is actually the problem. I was shocked seeing this review coming from Asian people. They even go as far as to talk about how even in the present day, how Asian people feed out or profit out from Black community, like in the sense that these people try to form allegiance with Black community. So far they are profiting this community. Then when these other people who happens to be pan-colored people comes into the picture, they said Asian people who are actually like a brother to Black people will now abandon these Black people and try to mingle with or side with pan-colored people that will end up at the end of the day disappointing them. I pointed that this same, you know, review out because of everything that has to do with affirmative action. I could vividly remember during the case of affirmative action where some group of people, if not even all these Asian people, actually thought that affirmative action was benefiting black people. You know, they did everything they could do, teamed up with, pan-colored people, and they dismantled affirmative action. You know, it all started from when an Asian boy who probably didn't get admitted to one of these Ivy schools. I don't know if you guys still remember. So when he didn't get this admission from this Ivy school, he claimed that he didn't get that because of affirmative action that allows people to get admitted. It's just like DEI and all of that. So he went as far as to talk about how some of these black people who are not educated get into the Ivy schools because of affirmative action. That, getting admission was supposed to be on merit base, which nobody's actually, disputing that fact. Even if affirmative action was in place, I believe that if someone is able to get admitted into this Ivy school, this person actually qualifies to be in the said school. But these people actually think that black people are less intelligent, so because of affirmative action they are getting admitted into the Ivy school, thereby blocking their way into getting the admission. And one thing led to the other. It was a case of removing or not removing. Black people was actually telling these people that we are not the reason why you're not getting admitted, or you didn't get admitted, or we are not the reason. But these guys actually thought that, okay, because this affirmative action was in place, these guys are getting admitted, we need to dismantle affirmative action. They teamed up with some group of white people, and affirmative action was removed without even realizing that affirmative action actually benefits white women. And when they realized that affirmative action was not even the problem, this is when they have to come on the social platform to cry about how black people told us, but we couldn't listen to them. This is just the problem. And now with the sinners, I like the fact that some of these Asian people are identifying that some Asian people, or maybe even all, actually, benefit. Like, they want to mingle with you as a black person. So far they are ripping you off, or so far they are benefiting from you. And when they are done, then they want to align themselves with some pan-color people. And sinners, try to send that message. And I like the fact that they are like, realizing it right now. And for them to actually like, we are so sorry. The people that we were supposed to be aligned with, these people, we're not supposed to be, coming for them. I like that fact. But just that, why is it that it's always black people who are all there pleasing people? Black people are pleasing. They're the pleasant. They please people, but people don't return the same energy that is being given to them from these people. So when I saw this, I thought I was just gonna put it up here. Wanna just leave me your own thought in the comment section of what you think of this video. And please, do not forget that we do not support any form of bullying and harassment. We're just here for educational and informative purposes. If you've not seen the sinners, try your best to see it. I'm here to see it, but the reviews I've been getting so far is just so positive. And I will see you lovelies when I upload the next one. Thought in the comment section of what you think of this video. And please do not forget that we do not support any form of bullying and harassment. We are just here for educational and informative purposes. So if you've not subscribed to this channel, do your girl a huge favor to click on the subscription button, like, and I will see you lovelies when I upload the next one.